Hey guys, it's Chala from Crafting Through the Chaos of Life. Thanks for joining me for another video. Today we are going to be delving into the world of mixed media art. I thought it would be a fun change from just creating regular greeting cards. So let's get started. I'm going to start off with a 10 by 10 canvas. I think I just purchased this from the dollar store, but you can definitely get them online. I am using some watered down Mod Podge and just doing a big layer of this over top of the canvas because I'm going to lay some 12 by 12 just scrapbook paper over top just to kind of give it a background. Now I did add a little more than I wanted to, so I'm just going to go ahead and scrape up the excess and put it back into my container. I do want a good amount to adhere down the scrapbook paper, but I got a little heavy-handed here. Alright, I'm going to lay down my 12 by 12 scrapbook paper, and I'm just using a gift card to smooth it down. It doesn't matter if there's any wrinkles in it because that'll just simply add texture to our project. The next thing I want to do is add the little slits to the corners so that I can wrap this around the canvas itself. Again, using that gift card just to kind of smooth it out so that it has some time to dry and getting that glue kind of all over in the back. I'll add a little bit more of the glue and wrap the paper around the edges. Once I have the paper wrapped around the edges, I can go ahead and pull out my gesso. This is just some white gesso that I picked up at my local Michael's store. I'll link some down below that you can definitely check out as well. This is not the translucent one, this is more of the opaque one, and I do get a little heavy-handed with it. You can definitely do a lighter coat, but I just went ahead and laid this down. I don't mind if some of that brown is peeking through, that's actually quite nice, but I do want to get a good amount laid down so that I can add different types of distress inks over top. The next thing I want to do is find some interesting papers that I can just go ahead and decoupage on top of this canvas. I have some music paper here that I've been using for some junk journals that I've been making, and I thought this was a great opportunity just to kind of use the leftover bits, so I'm just simply ripping them up. I think instead of cutting them, ripping them gives it a little bit more of an organic feel. I also have these amazing napkins from I think I just got these from the dollar store to tell you the truth, and I want to go ahead and add some of these to bring in the floral element and give it some more interesting texture. I think the more texture that you have on your mixed media canvas, the better it is. Again, I want to just open this up. Now there are several layers to different napkins. Sometimes there's 3 layers, sometimes there's 2. On this particular one there is 2 layers. Now as you can see, this part is a little bit of a fiddly process, but there is a little trick to it. What you want to do is go ahead and grab a piece of tape, put it on your finger, and it'll rip that layer off. So once I have the 2 pieces separated, I can just fussy rip around the flowers that I want to put onto my project. Before I get too ahead of myself, I do want to make sure I start adhering down these different pieces to my canvas. Now I did go ahead and make sure that I hit this canvas with my heat tool and make sure it was really dry before I started adding these elements. You do want to make sure that your gesso is nice and dry. Now again, I'm just using some watered down decoupage Mod Podge to go ahead and adhere this down to my canvas. And there are 2 different types of Mod Podge. There is glossy and there is the satin, and I'm just using the satin this time just with a little bit of water added into it just to thin it out a wee bit. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and just kind of fussy tear around the edges of this napkin a little bit more just so that it again is a little more organic look to it, and then just adding some more decoupage paste, some of that Mod Podge down, and then I'll add it very, very carefully over top of the napkin. Now when you are decoupaging with napkins, they are very, very fragile, so you want to make sure you use a very light hand with it and go over very gently over top with your brush. Now you want these layers to dry either by letting them air dry overnight or for a couple hours, or you can do what I did and just hit it with a heat gun. I'm adding a little bit of texture to the edge of my canvas here. I'm using some vintage photo distress ink, although I did have some red ink already on my brush that I did not realize I forgot to clean off my brush before using, but that's okay. It added a really cool kind of pink texture to it, so I'm gonna go with it. I'm using the vintage photo and whatever ink was left over on my brush just to give this a little bit more color. I really enjoyed the look of that kind of reddish look to it, so I'm actually going to go ahead and bring in another distress ink color. And actually I should say it's not a distress ink, it's a distress stain that I'm going to be adding, which is the Victorian Velvet, which is just such a pretty color, and it looks so nice with this canvas. It actually worked beautifully with the color of the napkins. So I'm just going to go ahead and apply this directly onto my canvas. Now this is the first time I'm using it, so I do have to prime it a little bit, but I really enjoyed working with these. Like I said, it's the first time I've worked with them, but laying the inks down and then just using my fingers as a tool just to blend it onto the top of that gesso, I just think it looked really cool and worked nicely with the colors of the flowers in the napkins. Once I was done covering the entire top of the canvas as well as the edges, I pulled out some ephemera bits that I like to use for my junk journaling. I found this beautiful butterfly that I just thought would add a really interesting element to this canvas, and I thought it really needed to be on there just to give a nice little focal point to the canvas itself. Again, I Mod Podge that down to the top of the canvas, and then I'll hit it with my heat gun just to give it a quick dry. Now the next thing we're going to do is pull out this poppy dye from Lawn Fawn. I think this is going to make really cool flowers to add to our mixed media project. So I'm just going to go ahead and die cut these out with my Gemini Junior, and I'm just going to use book page as sort of an interesting element. I can use scrapbook paper, I can use really colored papers, but I just really thought that with mixed media, using some book pages would be a really nice fun touch. The other thing I'm going to do is pull out this beautiful old dictionary that I have, and I'm going to add some of these vintage aged looking dictionary pages just to add some different color and texture to the project as well. Once the pieces are die cut out, I can go ahead and use my Waffle Flower mini media mat just to hold them down as I do some different distress ink blending on top of them. I'm going to do some blending with scattered straw, I believe, and some mowed lawn, I think it is, but I will definitely link the colors that I use down below and over on the blog. And just giving them a nice light little bit of color of the distress ink, I think really kind of brings out the texture and the words on this project itself. I then assemble the pieces, and I've gone ahead as well and distressed the edges of these flowers with a little bit of vintage photo. I can then kind of bend them up just to give them a little bit more dimension and texture to the project. I am using some art glitter glue this time. Usually I like to use my Gina K Connect glue, but the fine tip on this art glitter glue is just really phenomenal and nice and detailed. Now what I can do is go ahead and lay these out on top of the canvas and begin to adhere them down. Again, I'm using that art glitter glue as it really works well with mixed media projects. It's nice and strong and it dries clear. After I have the flowers glued down, I want to add another dimension to my project, and I want to add some stamping. So I've pulled out my Stampers Anonymous Field Notes stamp set, and I'm going to add just a few different stamps to the project itself. I really like this one in particular that was a specimen stamp, so I'm going to use Stays On. I think this is a really great ink for this project just to make sure it doesn't smudge or come off. So I'll go ahead and stamp this image down. And then I like to add a little bit of more interest using some numbers. I think numbers are a really cool way to add different interest to a project, so I'm going to pick some numbers out and then I will go ahead and stamp those down on the canvas as well. I like working in threes, so I'm going to add one more stamp here. I think this circle stamp will add another little bit of interest to this project, and I'll just stamp that right over top of the napkin, and I think that looks really neat. I printed off this really cool saying off the internet, and then I'm just going to ink up the edges just to give it a little bit more of that vintagey look, and I'll add that to the lower left hand corner of this project. I think that looks really good right there. I thought this project could use a little bit of shine to it, so I pulled out my Ranger Liquid Pearls Dimensional liquid here and just testing it out. Again, using my favorite number of threes, I will add 3 little dots to the top and then again below. I'm not sure I really liked how I did the dots around the text there, but you know what, it's down and that's okay. It'll grow on me. Now, I did have this project sitting on the side for a while, and I felt like it was missing something right up at the top. So I pulled out these stencils that I just got from the dollar store. If you have stencils already in your stash, you can go ahead and use those, but I thought this would be a great little place to add some texture paste. And in this particular stencil that I got from the dollar store, it had a kind of like a little vintage floral image in it that I thought would work well. Now, as I'm looking at this, this is more like stickers that are on here. Not really wild about it, but I think it'll work okay for this project as long as I work really carefully. So I'm going to lay it down, and I'm going to use some purple tape just to adhere it to the canvas, just so it doesn't move around on me. Now, my texture paste, I should have put a piece of cellophane over top when I closed it up the last time, because it did get a little dry on the edges, so there are a few little goobery bits in there, but I'm just going to kind of work in the softer areas and pull out the hard chunky bits. So just again mixing it up, and then I'm adding a nice thin layer over top of that stencil. Once you're done using your texture paste, make sure that you clean off your palette knife and your stencil right away with a baby wipe, or take it to the sink to wash it off. I thought that was the perfect addition to this canvas. That's exactly what it needed in that spot. And then once I'm done having it dry, I will go ahead and add some vintage photo distress ink just to give it a little bit more interest. Again, make sure that when you are using texture paste, you clean your materials off right away, or they will be unusable. Look at this. I am so happy with the way that this canvas turned out. Now let's take a closer look at this finished canvas. I thought this was a really fun way to add some florals to a project, and just something different other than just doing cards all the time. I really hope you enjoyed today's mixed media project. Please make sure you leave me a comment down below and let me know what you think. Hey guys, I would really love it if you sent me some snail mail. I'd love to receive your cards and see what you've been busy making. As well, everybody who sends me a card will get something free in the mail, and I hope to show your cards on one of my next videos. As always, you can find the materials used in today's video down below in the description and over at my blog. Any purchases made through these links helps me to bring you future content and tutorials at no extra cost to you. Another way you can show your support is simply by liking, sharing, and subscribing so as not to miss any future posts. Thanks again, and until next time, P.S. I love you.